Hello and welcome to Twin Talk, a podcast for book lovers everywhere. I'm Angie and I'm here with my sister Joy. And today we have two very special guests. So we are here with my daughter Cambry, who is on my left, and her best friend Kinsey. Her name's Mackenzie, but we call her Kinsey on my right here. So we invited Cambry and Kinsey to join us today to discuss the book Warriors Don't Cry. So first of all, I'm going to read the book summary. So just to give our listeners just a little information about the book. Warriors Don't Cry is a memoir written by Melba Patillo Bills and was published in 1994. Following the landmark 1954 Supreme Court ruling Brown versus Board of Education, Melba Patillo became a warrior on the front lines of a civil rights firestorm. Warriors Don't Cry is her autobiographical account of the integration of Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957. The book explores not only the power of racism, but also ideas such as justice, identity, and choice. The 9 Black students chosen to be the first to integrate the all-white public school at Central High became known as the Little Rock Nine. So my first question is for Mac. Sorry, I'm gonna call you Mac. You know, so I understand this was a reading assignment for your English class. And so when your teacher first announced this, what was your first reaction that you're gonna be reading this book?
I wasn't super thrilled. I'm not the biggest fan of nonfiction stories, but they gave us a paper when they told us we were gonna read it that gave us like a warning for subject matter and like language that we had to take home to our parents, so they knew that we were going to read it.
I was gonna say I didn't get
yeah
that piece
they
of
gave
paper.
it they gave it to our class but not her class.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, oh.
Okay, I'm actually glad that she mentioned that, because so obviously Joy and I have read the book too, and I only read it because Cambry was reading it.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, they say the N word a lot throughout the book.
They do.
And so I was wondering how they prepared you guys for that.
Yeah, they told us that it was on the sheet of paper, and it was like, just so your parents know. And I don't know, I guess her teacher just didn't do it for any of her classes, but I have a different teacher.
Yeah, she warned us about it, but she didn't send a note home to our parents.
We had an actual paper.
Okay.
She was like, show this to your parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know that they prepared you for that. Okay. So Cambry, this question's for you. Before reading Warriors Don't Cry, had you ever heard of the book, or were you aware of the events that happened about integration at Little Rock?
So last year I had an Arkansas history class, and we learned about the Little Rock Nine, and we watched a documentary on it, but I had never heard of the book Warriors Don't Cry.
Oh, okay. Okay. So Mac, in the book, Melba describes her day-to-day life at Central High School. Can you kind of just briefly describe what her experiences were like, or her life in general at that school?
It wasn't great. From right when she got there every day till she was leaving, she just got bullied and like assaulted, and just like people would say mean things, try to hurt her, do anything that they could, like, because they didn't want her there. So it was just all the time people were like just being awful. And just to kind of go a little further on that, I mean, it was unreal what she went through. And not only that, it was people, if people weren't being mean to her or trying to hurt her, they were pretending like she was invisible. You know, it was awful. So Cambry, what was the most shocking thing in your opinion that happened to Melba during her time at Central?
There's so many.
Yeah.
But the most shocking thing to me was probably acid being thrown in her eyes, and the dynamite got thrown at her. Mm-hmm. And especially when she got locked in the bathroom stall and fire.
Oh, they were setting
paper balls on fire and throwing them over at her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was awful. Yeah. Well, I know as an adult, so as I was reading the book over and over again, I just was amazed at this kind of the passive attitude the teachers had. It almost seemed like they just didn't care. And so, and I kept thinking over and over, oh my gosh, I have 2 sisters who are teachers. Of course, Joy is one of them, and my older sister, Sherry. They're both teachers. So Joy, I was just real curious, as a teacher, I want to hear your views on the behavior of the teachers at Central. You know, what were your thoughts and feelings as you read about all the abuse the students were taking, while for the most part, the teachers just seemed to be turning a blind eye?
It was pretty shocking. Like today, we have zero tolerance for bullying. Most schools have zero tolerance policies. I mean, the smallest little thing, whether it's verbal or physical, could get you expelled. And man, these kids were doing, what today is assault and battery. But I also had to remind myself that it was a whole different time period, whole different frame of thought, frame of mind. Like I remember asking our mom, well, Mom, what did you think? Because she grew up in this time period. She graduated in 1959 and from a high school in Arkansas, right? And I said, what did you think when you saw whites only over the fountains and that the blacks had their own water fountain? And what did you think when the blacks had to sit in the back of the bus? She said, I didn't think anything of it. It's just how things were. And so as a cultural thing, especially in the South, they just accepted it. They didn't question it. It was how things were. But even with that in the back of my mind, knowing that a lot of these teachers grew up with that mentality, that's just how things are, there's nothing wrong with it. It was still shocking to know that some of these teachers did nothing when these students were literally going through hell and back. They really were. What got me about the book, I even taught when I used to teach English, I taught a unit on the Little Rock Nine, but we focused on Ernest Green and we watched the Ernest Green story. And it was bad, don't get me wrong, but this girl went to a lot more detail and the abuse was a lot worse than I realized.
Yeah. So I'm just curious. Let's start with Cambry. How many days do you think you would have lasted if that was you in her place in the school?
Not very many.
Not very
Probably,
many.
I would say less than a week. Maybe not even half a day. I can't imagine.
What about you?
I completely agree with that. I think it depends on how fast it got, like actual like awful things happening. Like
Maybe like physical.
Once it got physical, I don't think I would have been able to do it anymore.
Joy, what about you?
I don't know that I could have lasted 2 or 3 days at that time period, when you're so young and you really, really want acceptance so badly. I don't know that it's a miracle to me that they lasted through the whole year. Most
So that brings me to the next question, which is for you, Joy, talking about how she made it. Okay. So most people couldn't have endured that. All right. But Melba did. She continued to come back to school day after day. Could you kind of tell our listeners a little bit about Melba's family life and faith?
Well, they were very strong Christians. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying how they helped her just get through day-to-day life.
Yeah, I think their faith is what carried her through. I don't think she would have made it if her grandmother seemed to be the rock in her life, her key spiritual leader there. And to me, she always helped Melba see the bigger picture. Like when Melba was focusing on the day-to-day, her grandmother would help her see the bigger picture, how it's going to lead to something bigger and greater than herself. And yeah, I think the grandmother was key to her success and not quitting and leaving.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so this last question is for all of you. So Mac, if you had to pick one thing from the book that left a lasting impression on you, what would that be?
I think it would probably be Link near the end of the book, just because it's like all these awful things this whole time, and then all of a sudden he just comes out of nowhere and he's helping her and like giving her help to like keep from getting hurt.
Okay, so can tell everybody who Link was?
He was a white boy who saw her getting assaulted by someone, and he helped her escape. And then from then on out, he just kind of he would give her hints on what was going to happen and when and how to stay away from it.
Yeah, he would call her on the phone at night and kind of prepare her for what was being planned against her the next day. Cambry, did anything in the book stand out to you that left a lasting impression on you?
Just every time she got hurt or abused, I don't know how to say it. It just stuck with me how bad she got hurt and stuff, and just kept staying there, and she didn't go home.
How she was able to.
She just kept going back to school.
Yeah. What about you, Joy? And Joy, this is fresh on your mind. You just read this, didn't you?
Yeah. It's kind of what Cambry's saying, just endurance, how much people can endure when it's something they truly believe in, how they persevered, they overcome just the biggest obstacles you can imagine to just go to school.
Yeah. Okay, so well, I said that was our last question a while ago. Obviously, it wasn't, but we're almost done. Okay, so Mac, if you were going to try to convince someone to read this book, maybe a friend who had never read it, what would you tell them about the book as to why you think they should read it?
I mean, it's kind of close to home, depending. I used to live like 20 minutes from Little Rock. So if it was someone that was down there, it'd be like, I mean, if you want to learn anything about the history of your town, I mean, this would be the book to read, and it gives you the point of view of someone who went through it. Because anyone else, that like administrators, teachers, anyone else, I mean, it probably wouldn't be the same as hearing it from one of the 9.
Oh, that's good. That's a good point. Canberry, if you were going to try to convince somebody to read it, what would you say? Why would you tell someone they need to read it?
I would just say it definitely changes someone's point of view, the way you like treat people. They would definitely not act anything like that anymore after they read the book, you know.
That's a good point too. It really does make you think about your own behavior, you know. Joy, what about you? Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think especially I'm so glad that they're teaching this in the schools, because I think we need to, you know, us all being from Arkansas, we need to be aware of our history and how far we've come. To me, that's one thing the book did for me too, is show me how far we've come. And it was thanks to these 9 students is one of the reasons. And but yeah, I wish it was required reading for students all across the United States, you know.
I'll tell you what stuck with me was the fact that these kids gave up their innocence. I mean, they literally gave up their innocence. They gave up their junior. One boy gave up his senior year. That's a year they'll never get back. And those are the years that kids look forward to and think about. There's so many special things that happen during your time of life. And it made me realize, you know, freedom's not cheap. You know, they gave up a lot, but their sacrifice though paved the way so that all these, you know, Black people today, that they don't have to go through what they went through because they did it for them.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and rate the book. Let's see, who do we want to start with? Joy, how many warriors do you give this book?
I'm gonna give it 4.5 warriors.
Woo! That's a high rating for
It was
us.
a good book. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. What about you, Meg?
I would say probably a 4, because it's a really good book, but it's not for everyone. Some people can't do stuff like that, like read about stuff like that. It just
And there was so much offensive, like I could see a Black person reading it really struggling because they use the N word so much. It would be tough to read that over and over, I think.
hard book to get into, because like I couldn't do it for so long because I was like, I didn't want to read it because it was like upsetting to read all of it.
That's a good point. Yeah. Canberry, how many warriors do you give the book?
Same as Mackenzie, I'm gonna give it 4.
4?
Yeah.
Okay. But did you guys think it was interesting though?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It kept your interest throughout
Yeah.
the book? Okay.
Like, I'm not a big fan of reading, you know.
I
I was actually pretty interested in this book, so.
I thought it was very interesting too. So, and I'm just gonna say one last thing. So, you know, you hear about racism and you hear about, oh, this happened and that happened, but until you read someone's personal account and their day to day, what she went through every day for the whole school year, and it was absolutely horrendous. It truly, the 2 words kept coming to my mind: eye-opening. It was just so eye-opening to see, wow, okay, you know, I hear about racism, but until I actually could put faces to it and actions, it became real to me.
And I'm going to add one last thing, if it's okay. I do know a man who attended Little Rock High the year that they integrated. And I said, well, what was it like? He said, yeah, it was pretty rough at first. And we didn't get to have a football team that year because of all the chaos that was going on. And they were expected to win like state champion that year. They were really good. And he said he always regretted that he didn't get to play a senior year of football. And he said he acted like he became friends with one of them, but he never really talked about what all they went through. I don't even know if he was aware, but Timmy's like, yeah, I remember that, you know, but I just thought it was interesting that he said he lost his senior year of football because of it.
And you're making a good point. They brought out the point that there was a lot of the white students who really they weren't necessarily prejudiced, but they were being so ostracized and pressured into that group of segregationists. And they all lost their junior and senior years because of the chaos. So there was a lot of innocent people that had to suffer as well. just because.
Yeah.
So, all right. So this is everybody's chance. Does anybody want to say anything else before we close about the book that you didn't get to say?
I
No?
don't think so.
I can't think of anything.
Hey, two teenage girls who have nothing else to say. Okay.
Miracles
thanks.
happen. Hey.
Well, thank you for joining us. We hope you take our advice and read this book, and you don't want to miss our next podcast where we're going to be discussing the book Seabiscuit. We will see you next time on
Twin Talk.
Oh, I should have told y'all we were going to do that at the end.
I
Just
knew
say
it.
with
I
us.
knew
Yeah, she knew.
Yeah, all right. Good job, girls.
Oh, why? Is she showing you?
Holy cow. 319 text messages?
It's a thing.
I'm trying to get them.
That is crazy.